All right, guys. Our session today is Don't Bug Out. It's only blended. And we are all four from Heritage High School. I am Amanda Butler, the librarian here at, well, not here. Here is my dining room, but I'm the librarian at Heritage High School.
And I'm Mandy Bush, and I'm the digital learning coach at Heritage High School. And then we have two teachers with us. So where are they?
I'm Tara Gruber. I teach AP World History. I'm going to teach AP European History next year. I taught on-level World History, so history.
She knows all the things.
Yes.
And I'm Christy Barnes. I teach English 1 and AP Lit.
And we are going to be talking about blended learning. So if you haven't gotten the copy of the presentation, make sure you do that so that you can go through it with us as we're navigate through it. Oh geez, it's starting. This is fun. All right. So right now what we need you guys to do is we want to know a little bit about you. We would like you to tell us in the chat your name, your campus, and what your role is. Are you a teacher? You support staff? Are you admin? What do you do? So take a couple of seconds, post in the chat, and tell us all about you.
Dang, y'all are on fire today. The last group was like slow typing. There's like 85 responses in there already. Hey, Ashley. Oh, HHS. Hey, Linda.
Lots of elementary, middle. My DLC whole crew is here.
I'm excited.
Ready to go.
Secondary peeps.
Yeah, lots of secondary. All right. And y'all just keep going. This is a very full group.
No, I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Here to support you, Mandy. Okay, well, I'll just remain unsupported over here in the corner.
Thanks, Katrina. Okay, so our commitment to Future Ready, you guys have seen this all day, but this will connect to what we do with blended learning. And this is a lot of our why we do blended over at Heritage and why we started it all. And if you were in, oh my gosh, now you're gonna get a close-up. If you were in this session earlier today about personalized learning, you might have seen this as well. There is a connection with blended and personalized because it's like the pathway to personalized. And we are moving in that direction. We're not at personalized yet at Heritage, but we are jumping in with blended this school year. So we're really excited to get started with that. And let's see. This is who we are. If you ever need to reach out to us, follow us on Twitter. We will follow you back. So Tara, Amanda, myself, and Christy, you can get our Twitter handles there. Those are our email addresses. If you have any questions or need the resources again, have questions about our resources, this is definitely a place for you to reach out to us, a way to reach out to us. So we're going to start with what is blended learning, and we like to come to a common a common language whenever we're talking about blended learning. We did this on our campus so that we all were speaking the same lingo. We all understood that blended learning is any formal education program in which a student learns, at least in part, through online with some element of student control over time, place, path, and or pace. And a big aha for me with blended is that it is not all time, place, path, and pace all at the same time necessarily. It is a piece of that. So it can be any one of those. Maybe the student controls the time that they do something, the place that they do it, the path that they go about it, or how quickly they move through it, but that they have some control over it. So, did you want to say something? Another thing that we do is we like to think about what our why is at the beginning. And for us, we went down this path because when Future Ready kind of came out and everyone started getting the Future Ready, this is what Future Ready is, we knew immediately that we needed to shift in teaching and learning in order for our students to be ready to do that. And we saw that through Blended, we would be able to make that shift. So for us, that is our why. It's a shift for our teachers, and we're not all there yet, but it's our path and how we're getting there. Okay. One of the things that we also need to establish at the beginning is what Blended is and what Blended is not. A lot of times there's some misconceptions with Blended. Blended is leveraging the time that you have in class. For us as a high school, we have 90-minute periods that are on a block schedule. So we have our A day and we have our B day. And if our teachers spent 90 minutes from beginning to end lecturing, they're not going to hold attention, engagement, any of that with their students. So we have to leverage that time that we have. So finding the blended model that works, that leverages the time that they have is what we do. We have more on one-on-one and small group interactions, not necessarily group work, but that communication, allowing for students to communicate and work together and, you know, have that happening more often than individual. There's also student and teacher controlled activities. It's not all the teacher. It's not all the student. You have a nice mix of those two together. The instructional design is integrated for online and face-to-face environments as well. So.
And then some common misconceptions that we see often, or the things that blended is not. You won't be losing any instructional time with blended learning if you take on a blended learning model. Putting kids in front of screens is not something that commonly happens in its entirety. Teacher-controlled activities, which is kind of what Mandy was talking about. We don't just stand at the front of the classroom and lecture for 90 minutes. That is not something that is a common characteristic in blended learning. A tech-rich integration, that is a great quality of any future-ready classroom. However, it is not solely the focus of blended learning. And then online only, which is the biggest, I think, misconception. A lot of people will say we're blended learning right now, when in reality, we're just virtual. Online only, period. Like, that is the only way that they're receiving information and content, is not blended learning.
And I like when we're talking about tech-rich integration only, I like that those teachers who are using a lot of tech, who are integrating tech, they're in a good place to start blending in their classroom. But again, blended does not have to be online only. There's a lot of things that can be done that are blended, that are offline activities. And so I think that that's a really important thing to keep in mind. So features and models, we are taking a look specifically at rotational models, because for us, with face-to-face, that is something that we found that the teachers were most comfortable with. They understood it. They've had some experience with some form of it, and it just was easy to move to that. So we're going to be looking at station rotation today, individual rotation, and a flipped classroom. But when you look at the features, you're going to see the seamless, that there's a seamless connection between online and offline work. So it's not just like choppy, like here's online, here's offline, here's online, here's offline, but they move together. Again, increased collaboration over those key components of blended. That we're utilizing a learning management system. Secondary is using Canvas. upper elementary is using Google Classroom, and lower elementary is using Seesaw. And then repurpose time in class. So when you're not in class, how are we still using that time, or reusing that time, I should say. So what we have here is a document that's a blended learning look for, and we want to give you guys a few minutes to click it and take a look at it and put in the chat some things that are new ideas, or something that is an aha, surprise, question, any of those things, just something that comes to mind as you're looking at the blended learning look for. I love how you guys are like so active in the chat. This is so exciting because you guys are just all into that right now. I'm loving the failure thing too. Like, our teachers are going to talk in a little bit about failing as well, and what that was like. Not in a bad way. It's actually a good thing, you know, when you think about it. Like, failing is like how you learn. Yeah, it's how you learn, and it's important that it's okay, and that there's, you know, that support for you when that happens. So that's great.
Ooh, that's really good. Failure isn't fatal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, all of this stuff, you know, like we said at the very beginning, goes back to the Future Ready, and that's part of the reason that we're all over the blended learning. I mean, it aligns with it so much, and it was what we needed at the time to get our kids moving forward. So
it supports the soft skills that we were really honing in on, that our population were missing.
Yep. Cool. All right, so we're going to move on. And the next part of this is we're going to give you some time to explore a little bit. I don't know how much you guys know about these three specific models: the station rotation, the flipped, and the individual rotation. But we're going to give you guys some time to choose one. They're on slide 11 that you're not an expert in, or that you're not super comfortable in, or that you even want to know more about. There's a video, there's some links in there for you, and we just want to give you some time to look through those resources, and again, you know, come up with something that you want to share out, because we're going to be putting you guys in a breakout room next, and we're going to have you guys share that information out with each other. So take something that you're gleaning from one of these and be ready to share out with your breakout. So we're going to give you guys, one of those videos is kind of long. Amanda, where did you go? You went away for a minute. But I think it's the individual rotation. If you'll start at 2 minutes, if you're interested in that one is a little bit longer than the rest. But if you'll make sure your mics are muted, and I'm going to give you guys 8 minutes to explore these areas, and then we're going to come back together, and then we're going to go into a breakout room. So 8 minutes and explore. Hey guys, you have about 3 minutes remaining. All right, you guys are right at 1 minute, so be finishing up any videos that you're watching, anything that you're reading, and be ready to go to a breakout room. So be finishing up and come on back when you're finished. All right, excuse me, time is up. I hope that you guys are able to find something in there that kind of spoke to you and was good for your resource pool. I know that all of us have had some type of experience with some form of this. But one thing I like about putting these resources together is that you kind of see something that maybe you haven't seen before. Hopefully this is something that you haven't seen before and it was helpful. So what we're gonna do is I am going to put you in a breakout room and you guys are, let's get back to this so we have directions. You're gonna talk to one another about the models that you explored and take notes. There's a Padlet for you guys to use to post your group's takeaways, any questions you have, any comments that you have, how you see it being used in the classroom, maybe questions about using it in the classroom, any of those things, just some time for reflection and some time for conversation. I'm gonna give you, I know this is like back-to-back time, but we're gonna give you guys 10 minutes to break out. That way you have lots of time to discuss. The Padlet is linked on the next one, on the next slide. So if you are following along, you can.
While she's sending you guys out into your small groups to break out, if you feel comfortable, turn your video feed on so that the people in your small group know who they're talking to, since we don't really know each other. Unless you don't feel inclined and you aren't dressed appropriately or something.
All right, so I'm going to be breaking you out now. So enjoy your time with each other, and I'll be calling you back in about 10 minutes. Make sure that you post to the Padlet, and I'll be sending you some reminders as you are in your rooms. Have fun. So we're back to recording. All right, and this is our Padlet.
You guys should go back and check that out.
Yeah, you guys had a lot of thoughts on individual rotation. I think that was the one that most of us have the least familiarity with, it seemed. So it was interesting to read what what the conversation was, but there was a lot of conversation about mastery paths and let's see, someone else from the first one
We had
also
a lot
mentioned.
of, yeah, they did. They had the same,
Mastery
and this
paths,
session
yeah.
had the same questions too. Like the accountability piece came up a lot in both sessions,
Yep.
especially for primary, because with secondary, they have a little bit more independence with regards to location. And
Yeah.
so you can pull privileges from secondary, but primary, you can't just be like, go sit in the hall. Like, that doesn't really work. Like, they're not going to learn anything. You want them to learn, right?
Right.
Student
right.
mastery. So.
Right. And so you would just have to pick that model that works best for where you are. So, but it's nice to see all the different ones. All right. So now we're going to have a conversation with two of our teachers, Christy Barnes and Tara Gruber. This is how they have made blended learning work this past school year, pre-COVID. So just like pre-COVID and post-COVID. Actually, it's not post. It's just
no, it's COVID.
Yeah. So we're gonna let them have a conversation with you guys and talk about it with you. And if you have questions for them, go ahead and post it in the chat, and we'll have them answer it. So, Christy, do you want to take off?
All right, hey guys. So what I did was I started small. So I started with just a poetry lesson I had. We were reading The Raven, and I did station rotations with them. And it was like a pre-AP English 1 class, and some of those kids were kind of squirrely, and I knew I needed to get them up and moving, and it went so well. So I know sometimes all of this gets super overwhelming, and I sometimes see it and get overwhelmed, but just starting small. And so eventually I started with like a poetry lesson, and I moved on to like the whole unit for that. So my whole multi-genre unit ended up being little elements of blended that I want to create full blended activities for. And then also just being vulnerable to your classes. So I'll go in and tell one of my classes like, hey, we're gonna try something new today. And it might not work or it might work, and we'll just see how it goes. And I've had both. I've had like the Raven poetry stations, that was amazing, but then I tried something for Till a Mockingbird and it didn't go so hot. But it really helps create like that culture in my classroom. Then they see me fail, and like we just talk about it and we work through it and we end up moving on, and it's fine. So yeah, just don't be afraid to mess up and be vulnerable with them because they handle it well.
Hi, I'm Tara. I used my DLC and librarian a lot, especially at the beginning of the year and just throughout the year. I would send them, I need help with this lesson, and we would meet, and they provided a lot of resources, and we came up with a lot of cool activities. And I have team members that weren't really on board with blended learning or didn't really want to do it. I didn't make them. I would send them what I came up with, and I don't know, students talk. They're fun lessons. So they talk, and then eventually maybe your team members would be like, hey, can I try something with you? And just kind of piggybacking on what Christy said, like you have to let go of control. I mean, there were so many things that I did with my kids that I didn't really know how to use. We did a virtual tour. I never created a tour before in my life. And I was just really impressed with how quickly the students picked it up, and they would ask questions, and I would just say, hey, has anyone done this? Does anyone know how to do it? And they learn it fast. So don't be afraid to let go of control. And especially now that we're all virtual, I mean, if something messes up, it messes up and you're not in the classroom to fix it. So it's going to happen, and just they're okay with it. They know.
Yeah, and kind of going off of what Tara said, like I am always talking to Mandy and Amanda. When I was reading Romeo and Juliet again, before we even started this year, I was like, guys, I've got to find a new way to teach Romeo and Juliet. Like we can't just like keep doing the same thing over and over. And so like they have a ton of tools, and just utilizing them is super important for new stuff.
And with the start small, another thing is when you have an idea or you have a lesson, a lot of times, like I was like, oh, I have this great lesson, and I thought it would take a period, and it ended up taking 3 periods. So think of like how you could like take the lesson, cut it in half, and kind of like how we learned with quarantine last year, like cut it in half again. And then you got probably a perfectly timed lesson.
Both of them had mentioned, and I want to just like highlight it again and reiterate it. They developed a rapport with their kids in the classroom, and those kids knew that they were trying new things and they were trying to be innovative, and they offered a lot of grace, which is really kind of surprising. Those of you who teach secondary in here know that kids can kind of be cruel sometimes, and so they developed that initially, like right at the start. And I feel like that changed everything, and it changed the success rate of these lessons. Because you guys know, just like we were talking about in our chat earlier, you fail, but you fail forward. And if those kids, if you've built grace into the expectation of your classroom community, that's going to change your success with these blended learning models for sure.
It's a culture for them, and they're great examples of how to do it. Let's see, they have been gracious enough to share their resources that they have created. Flip books, digital notebooks, choice boards. Tara has some HyperDocs. I don't know if they're on there. But these are some resources that they've created that are for high school, their high school course, but can be adapted for elementary, for middle school, and for any content area. So it's just a matter of putting your stuff in, putting your spin on it. So feel free to use them and reach out to them if you have any questions about this. Of course, reach out to your DLC as well and get some help with it. But feel free to make copies of all of their things, because that's why they're in there. So
I think I mentioned in our last session, and I wanted to bring it up again with regards to these resources. These guys are content experts, and I think a lot of times your support staff, so like Mandy and I, we are kind of like more on the design side of things, and so the structure, if you will, and so that the content and stuff, that is completely, and that's you guys, that's your teachers. So all these resources and all these cool things, Mandy and I offered guidance to these guys, but they went in and they created their content. So all of these things are handmade by these guys. I'm sure we're here to help, but they put in the blood, sweat, and tears.
All right, so what we're going to talk about is kind of how we got to where we are and where we are with this, the beginning, and then how it was actually implemented. So Amanda's going to talk to you guys about the beginning.
The beginning. So when we saw that Christy and Tara and several other teachers were wanting to do something different to just kind of change the mindset on campus with their students, they were delivering their curriculum and the students just weren't absorbing it the way that they wanted them to. So they started doing blended with Mandy and myself, and or different models in blended. And it was really successful. And so Mandy, in her Mandy way, took it and like ran 90 miles an hour with it. And we started, kind of pushing it for, not pushing it, but there's a negative connotation there, but just a little bit, with our other teachers. And so we had a conversation with our administrator, Dr. Gray at Heritage High School, and she is an absolute like saint. And she was all about it. And I think that is where the entire blended learning process took a pivot in the right direction, is
Dr. Gray was on board and she was excited and she was supportive. So once we had Dr. Gray's support, we then went and kind of started recruiting more teachers, implementing a few more lessons. We came back to Dr. Gray again. We were constantly checking in with her. We generated a timeline, kind of like a goal, because I tend to be like, now, like I want to do it now. Let's start on Monday, change our schedule. Like, what do we need to do? And I learned from Mandy and from Dr. Gray that putting in place a timeline and building structure into that timeline makes for a more successful end product. And so we generated a timeline that was a year-long timeline. And then we started researching, and that really helped me a lot. Catlin Tucker is a great resource there, but holy moly, we researched the heck out of this concept and we learned a lot. I relied, and I know Mandy relied a lot on her PLN. Just like jump on Twitter and type in hashtag blended learning and you're going to go down a rabbit hole. We'll see you like at Halloween. We visited Northwest ISD. They have a fully blended program across several different curriculum areas, and it's pretty phenomenal to watch. And that changed everything for me personally, being able to kind of see blended classrooms in action and like watch the kids have ownership of their learning and be independent. And they were functioning honestly better than I functioned as a college student. And these guys are sophomores and juniors. And then we revisited our implementation plan and kind of that's a big deal for us too. And this whole process is being flexible and just kind of being soft with what direction it was going, because it was brand new, and flexibility is a huge piece in all of this. And then a big one that we got from Northwest ISD, and obviously from ourselves because we're not goobers very often, is giving our teachers time, building in time for them to learn about blended learning, not just being like, hey, blended learning is cool, let's rotate stations, and then we'll catch all some other time. We give them a lot of time, we give them a lot of professional development, and then Mandy is going to talk about the implementation piece of that development.
Yeah. So what we ended up doing and how this all took off was we attended a blended learning conference over in Keller ISD. We just happened to be looking at something on TCEA's website, and boom, it came up as a professional learning opportunity. We networked at the conference. Through networking, that's when we got our site visit. That's how we were able to get some more resources. We researched and researched and researched. I cannot say that enough. We talked to teachers. We looked at different elements that were required in order to be blended and who would make a good fit for that. You know, teachers who are good with ambiguity and they're okay with it being muddy. That's a perfect person. We assembled a book club for blended learning so that we could have people on the same page, speaking the same language, doing the same type of things, and getting their ICs also on board for that content support. So every one of our teachers who are part of our book club cohort doing the blended learning also has the support of their campus IC. So they also have that content expert who's leading them along with us. And then we discussed our implementation plan with admin and district leaders for where we were headed and how we were on this blended learning path. So that's kind of where we went. When we're talking about what's stopping you from implementing that blended learning program, that blended learning classroom, there's a lot of things that come up, some anxiety that comes up, some questions that come up. These are common questions, and they're linked to some additional resources that hopefully will help answer them, like choosing the right teacher, the professional development, finding those roles and responsibilities, the infrastructure when it comes to technology as well, EdTech tools, and then measuring that program success, because we all want to know how we know it works. So are we looking for, certain test scores, AP test scores? Are we looking for STAR test score? What are we looking for to measure to say this was a success, this was good, and it was absolutely worth the hard work that we put in for this to pay off? And that answers it. So this is our toolbox that we use. If you have not read any of Catlin Tucker's books, 100% pick one up. They are amazing. Her resources are like mind-blowing. She's an English teacher, and so if you're in English world, she will speak to your heart. I'm a former English teacher. She speaks to everything, and I love her. But her website's phenomenal. Her books are phenomenal. The yellow book, I cannot remember for the life of me what it's called, but it's new. It's specifically just for teachers using blended learning in the classroom. Find ways to develop professionally, whether that's through Region 10, Region 11, TCEA, some way to find ways to develop professionally through or for blended learning. Visit those other school districts. We reached out to Northwest. They are so good about sharing. Hayes ISD is great for a site visit. That's where they reached out, or that's who they reached out to in order to also have that site visit. We have also shared a folder of our resources. All the resources that we have that are in here, possibly not in here. I tried to link as many as I could. Everything is there for you. So if something isn't linked right, or if you need more information, just reach out to us and let us know. And then it's just some other resources for you so that you guys can also be ready to go.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. And with this, it's so important that we do that. And so we come to the end of our time with you guys. We would love your feedback, and we want to honor your time today, so we don't want to hold you over. We know that this has been a long day. If you don't have a copy of this presentation, grab one through that link. Please provide us the feedback through the other bit.ly on the page. I'm sure you've done that all day, but also give us feedback for this session. And then, of course, please feel free to contact us through our email, through Twitter. It doesn't matter. I don't know when I'm going to be on campus, so I wouldn't say call. But you can just, whatever.
Too soon.
I know. Anyway, so please give us feedback and let us know how we can help you, how we can support you, and what you all need. And we will be here until 2:45 to answer any questions and stay with you. So
Yeah, thank you guys for choosing our session.